Welcome to the Never Ending Backlog podcast, your place for short reviews from a gamer with the goal of reducing his backlog. From adventures to sandboxes, join our host as we walk through a collection of unplayed treasures. Now, let's take a look at the featured game of this episode of the Never Ending Backlog.
Hello everybody, welcome to the next episode of Never Ending Backlog podcast. I'm your host Zach, and today we'll be reviewing the PC game Natural Selection 2 on Steam. So first of all, what is it? It's a first-person aliens versus humans online competitive game with RTS elements. I don't believe I ever played Natural Selection 1 or 2 in the past. I might have played 1 when I was younger and I used to visit an internet arcade machine in my local town, or next door town I should say. I thought it was a Half-Life mod originally, similar to Counter-Strike, which eventually became the standalone game. I might be thinking of something else, but I think there was something similar to the Natural Selection on Half-Life. But speaking of Half-Life mods, do you remember the vampire werewolf movie Underworld? It used to be one of my favorite movies, actually, and the soundtrack for Underworld is phenomenal. If you can find it, definitely find it. Like late 90s, early 2000s, action horror movies. So the Resident Evils, Underworlds, all of those movies had phenomenal soundtracks. Like, check them out. They're amazing. But anyway, did you know with Underworld, they actually released a Half-Life mod that converted Half-Life Deathmatch to werewolves versus vampires. They had the weapons and all that stuff. And I think I have it saved in one of my abandonware folders on my hard drive. So if I can find it, I'll share it with everybody because I'm sure it's been taken down and Sony removed it. But I remember going to Sony's website and downloading it, and it was really cool. And I think you can actually, if you find the URL, you can go to Wayback Machine and look at the website from a long time ago. It's really cool. And I also remember there's a mod I used to play, a Western mod for Half-Life as well, that I used to play. And it was for like the original Half-Life 1.0 kind of thing. But anyway, jump back into Natural Selection 2. It ran right off the bat. So right from installation, it worked great. So brownie points there. The other nice thing, this is really impressive. When I started the game for the very first time, and it ran perfectly, so super cool. It actually played a video that talked about the game, how to play it, what the different units were, why you should, like all these different things. So there's a whole tutorial just to start it. So it wasn't just like this animation where it's like, yeah, we're fighting aliens and we're fighting Marines. This is awesome. Like, it was actually a really helpful training tutorial before you even got into the game. So really cool. It has an Alien versus Predator vibe, which I really enjoy, because obviously it's Alien versus Marines. But it also reminds me when you play as the commander, which is a special role in the game, and the Battlefield game have some commanders. Battlefield 2 it used to have the commander role heavily, where you call artillery and siege strikes and all that stuff. So it's very similar to that, but it reminds me a lot of the squad-based game Alien vs. Predator for the PS2, which was one of my favorite Alien vs. Predator games because it was an RTS type game for the PlayStation 2, which was rare. I always enjoy it. I mean, I have Age of Empires 2 that was released in Europe for the PlayStation 2, and I still need to buy all the stuff to try it because I think that sounds amazing. Playing Age of Empires 2 on the PS2 just sounds great. But anyway, jump in. The 5760 by 1080, so the triple monitor resolution that I always complain about with games, actually worked. It was in the menus. It worked. It actually centered the menus into the center monitor, which is really nice. So it's my first real win for 5760 by 1080 during these reviews. So that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, when you play as the commander, or even as you play it as a Marine or an alien, the interface is actually spread out. So your map is in the far left monitor in the far left corner, and your health might be in the far right corner or in the bottom right corner. So unless you're sitting 3 to 4 feet away, it's not really ideal. I'm sure you can change the settings somehow, but at quick glance, I just didn't get, I couldn't figure out what I needed to change. I tried messing around with a lot of different settings, it just didn't work. But I'm sure there's something out there for that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I will say there are some other little control glitches with this game that I think is a little weird. You use WSAD to move around when you're in first person mode. However, you use the up arrows and the down arrows like that to move when you're in commander mode because like an RTS. And I get it. Most RTS games are the arrows, and most first-person shooters are WSAD, so I get to stick to the norm. But my hands are usually on the WSAD, so it kind of threw me off a little bit. And the WSAD has different controls when you play as a commander, because the commander is a top view version of the map, and you tell your units where to go, what to deploy, you drop stuff, you heal them, you drop ammo, all this kind of stuff. So it is combining like an RTS and squad based and first person shooter all in one game, which is pretty cool. Some cool things is the Marines are actually 3D printed. There's like a little 3D printing pedestal that 3D prints your Marines. That's how you spawn. You're printed. So as a 3D printer hobbyist, well, that's pretty cool. The resource collection and RTS components are a fun touch. It's definitely, addicting. I can see why it'd be addicting. The Marine gets repair tools, which reminds me a lot of the Welder from the Killing Floor series, which is a personal favorite series of mine. Was a big fan of Killing Floor 1. For those that you are not aware, it's a zombie survival game. Really well done, massive maps, and then you basically kill zombies, you get money, and then you go to the store and you buy stuff. The store is always in different locations on the map. My favorite level is the farm. There's like this massive farm with like 10 to 15 buildings, and you also have friends with you, but it's a survival game, so you can actually weld doors shut and like kind of direct the zombies into certain areas. There are different types of zombies. There was a boss at the end of the game that you had to, or at the end of a certain amount of ways that you have to beat to move on to the next world. Overall, if you haven't played Killing Floor, please do. Killing Floor 2 just came out, or not just came out, a few years ago. But we've been playing that a lot. The maps are much smaller. The graphics are stunning. The games are really well done. They have a lot of DLC, e-commerce goods where you can buy like skins and stuff. I'm not as big of a fan of that. Killing Floor 1 did not have most of those things. Killing Floor 1 was very much like a classic first-person shooter survival game with zombies. It's pretty much everything I wanted when I was younger, but I didn't get it until I was in college. So, there's that. In Natural Selection 2, the aliens remind me of the Zerg, basically, with pretty much every reason they should. Their structures, they have creep below it, which is called like the slimy stuff. If the slime goes away, then the structures that are built on it will die, just like it is in StarCraft. The creatures spawn from eggs that look just like the pods from StarCraft. The Skulk, which is like the initial creature, looks like a Zergling. The difference is the Skulk can actually run on walls and run on ceilings, and they do it in a pretty nice way. I know the Alien games also did this well, but overall I think it did pretty well. It also has like a planet-side tribes Unreal Tournament vibe to it regarding the Marines. Building stuff, building structures. It just reminded me a lot of those three games, especially Tribes. It really reminded me of Tribes. Controls work really well. Everything seems like the standard PC first-person shooter game. Mouse is your head movement. Your keyboard is your legs and body. There's a couple of cool things I noticed, like when the loading screens would cycle through. There's a picture of a bar that had the head of one of the aliens on it. And they call it the Onos bar because the Onos was the big main creature, which is basically the Mutalisk from StarCraft. It actually reminds me of the Outlaw bar from StarCraft 2, where Raynor is at, which is my favorite place. So that's pretty neat. Like I said, a lot of themes in this game. After completing the Marine and Alien tutorials, I kind of wish the aliens had a different voiceover for the training rather than the exact same one they used for the Marine. It's not a huge deal, but it's odd because the Marine tutorial voiceover, it made a lot of sense to me because he did sound like a Marine drill sergeant. Like he's like, and do this, you need to run here. And as the alien's just like, that's not really what I expect aliens to sound like. So it's a little odd there. So I think that's a little bit of a con for me. I will say regarding cons, this kind of deals with controls as well. There's a lot of buttons. Besides the WSAD, like if you're a commander, or even if you're not a commander, if you're just a Marine, you can request health packs, ammo, aliens have to evolve. Then there are other requests as well. So it takes a little bit, but I think if it had something along the lines of, in the Battlefield games, if you push Q, so next to your WSAD, Q, you hold it down, and then you cycle through what you're requesting or looking for, then you just hover over and you click it. I think that probably would have been a lot smoother rather than try to remember all these differences. Because, it is like Q, Z, S, D, and different functions, E, and it had all these different things. So it took a little while. And it seemed a little frustrating. There were some cool things like when you're an alien, they have like tunnels that go from base to base. So it's basically the Nidus Canal in StarCraft, but you never see the Nidus Canal in first person mode. So it's actually kind of cool going through it. It's pretty interesting. The biggest, I think, problem that I had with this game was the fact that it just automatically pushes voice chat on, and that's not something I really enjoy for multiplayer games. I'm not a big fan of voice chat. I like to play first-person shooters like Call of Duty, Battlefield, but I like to mute everyone in the game, in the party, so that way I can listen to my music or talk to friends, and I don't have to worry about other people hearing me. I'm just not a fan of interacting with strangers that way, especially since Call of Duty players really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, unfortunately. They weren't friendly. They were just immature. They were trying to ruin fun, and so it's not fun. And then I'd also play traditionally with my friends. So we'd have our own party chat, stuff like that. So we wouldn't want to hear them anyway because we're doing our own party chat. So this game kind of forces that. I think the only thing I could probably do is unplug my microphone, which would be frustrating. Now, I'm not saying I don't agree with the mic situation, because after I played, so there are a lot of tutorials in this game that you can play. I recommend playing all of them because A, they do a great job explaining, they're very smooth, and they cover all the bases. So they cover the humans, or the Marines, they cover the aliens, they cover being a Marine commander, they cover being an alien commander, and then they have like a boot camp, which is like a final training. And the commander is basically, each team has one commander, and they have multiple units. And the commander basically tells people what to do, where to go. They provide support. They build blueprints on the map, and then it's up to your team to actually build the items, but you're basically telling them where to do it and stuff like that. And the commander, I see why they need a mic, because it is very, like, they'll have a full overview of the map. They might have like little radar towers that look like comm stations, that act like comm stations from StarCraft. And they might be like, oh, there's 5 aliens coming to your left. Be aware, John. Don't go down there. And then John won't go down there. Or like, hey, Chris, go this way. Or hey, Elizabeth, don't do this or build here. So it is a very vocal command. It's kind of like that Tom Clancy's End War game that was trying to be voice controlled, but this is with humans. So it's a really interesting approach, which I think is really neat. So I understand why you need to have the mic, but I think maybe it's just not my type of game then in that situation. If you don't want to use mics and you want to try it without it, I actually created a listen server, which basically just means a server that you can play in. And it basically allows you to add bots, which I think is really cool. And I'm a big fan of bots, or AI bots, basically, so you can play first-person shooter games offline with just bots. I actually wrote an article a long time ago that was published about this, where a lot of modern games were removing this. And this game is not old by any way, shape, or form. But, there was a period of time where like the PlayStation 3 would start removing bots and stuff like that. And the PlayStation 2 was pretty big on bots and so on and so forth, because I'm a big fan of, my buddies and I, pre-internet, or before we had internet, I should say, or before the game systems that we played had internet, we would sit on the couch and be just 3 or 4 of us with GameCube controllers, and we'd play 007 Agent Under Fire, or Nightfire, and we'd have bots and all these different things, and it made us feel like we were in a much larger world than we actually were. So I'm a big fan of bots. For those people that don't want to play online, I understand it. So I'm glad this had bots. You will need to know the server console commands to add bots and bot commanders, similar as you would for Counter-Strike Condition 0 and Source. You have to do like add bot 1 in the server by hitting the tilde key. That's all available online. The Steam forums are super helpful. You can find it in like 5 seconds. So if you want to play it that way, you can also invite your friends to those ones as well. So that's pretty cool. So if you just want to just have your friends playing against bots, you can do that. It is separate computers. You can't all play on the same computer, but it's still pretty cool. The primary Marine rifle, assault rifle, reminds me of the assault rifle that the Marines get in the first-person shooter Starship Troopers. So yes, it's based on the movie. It's a wave kind of combat. It was one of those games that pushed out the new 3D graphics that looked really fake 3D, but it's kind of like a Perfect Dark Zero on the Xbox 360 when that first came out. It was like everything was really shiny and glossy. That's kind of what Starship Troopers looked like, but it was a really fun game. Like I said, I'd highly recommend completing all the tutorials. They're helpful. You also do get achievements for them, so that's pretty cool. But overall, I'd recommend this for people who enjoy co-op team-based online games. They're okay with communicating with others. You're not an introvert like me. They like games that are a little bit more advanced and complicated than a standard first-person shooter game. Like if you get bored with Call of Duty Battlefield, this game's probably for you. The commander role is absolutely an RTS, where you build resource generators, you tell your units where to go. But the funny thing is you're telling human players where to go, so they might not always listen to you. So it's very similar to The Sims in real life, where it's like, you should go over here. But you might not. You might have this own errand you want to go to. So it is like it's a real life version of The Sims with aliens and Marines, which is pretty cool. You have a whole view of the map. You move around with the arrow keys. It's pretty comprehensive. So in the end, I definitely recommend this game. The current best price for the game is $9.99 on the Humble Bundle store, and the best price has been $1.99 through Steam. So you can pick it up pretty cheap. The graphics, like I said, are really smooth, works well, supports 3 monitors if you're into that. But overall, it's just a really well done game. The developer is actually Unknown Worlds, and if that name sounds familiar, they also created the game Subnautica, which is also a complicated survival game base builder, but it's beautiful. I'll likely do a review on that in the future, since I'm not sure I have an hour dedicated to it, or at least not an hour straight. A lot of times I just sit and just look at how pretty it was. But I also played it when it was really early, before the DLCs. Even I think it was actually alpha when I started playing it, before beta even. Really cool game. It's basically about you're an astronaut or a space traveler, you crash into this water world, and you survive by collecting resources and building a base underwater. So if you like underwater stuff, it is very beautiful, gorgeous colors. That's Subnautica. That is not Natural Selection 2, but Natural Selection 2 is also really pretty if you enjoy space games. So that's my review. I definitely recommend it. Check it out. It's a cool first-person shooter game. It definitely switches things up. If you like complicated things, you like learning about a lot of new stuff, this game probably will do it for you. But thank you for joining us on this episode of Never Ending Backlog Podcast. I'm your host, Zach, and I'll see you next time.